Talking to Cornelius. Conversation 27. What was it like to live in the Huon in the late 1850s to early 1860s, old man? In your time it depended on who you asked. It was a place that had a bad reputation in the eyes of city people like the politician Thomas Gregson, a place where the working class occupation of sawyers and splitters was seen as unworthy of political representation. Some of the Hobart papers weren't much better than Gregson in their representation of the area. There were a run of reports in the early 1850s that painted the Huon as overcrowded with riverside sly grog shops, dissolute workers, corrupt constabulary, and a diverse range of criminal enterprises, including a lucrative trade in smuggling. There was one place worse than the Huon, and that was the deeper southwest region, as illustrated in this 1853 account. In my repeated journeys through and over the large district between Huon Point and South Cape, I have had abundant opportunity of witnessing the distressing state of outlawry in which this portion of the island at present is. That the worst characters, male and female, find an asylum here, particularly toward the south, is beyond a doubt. That it is a snug retreat for absconders and jailbreakers is undeniable. That death is threatened and attempted on the most frivolous quarrel, I can testify. That the absence of all power or the difficulty of obtaining it to maintain the fulfilment of contracts is such that both masters and men infringe agreements when it suits the purpose of either party with impunity. That robberies of the most daring and open character are being commuted without an attempt to bring the culprits to justice, even when they are known to their neighbours. That burials have taken place after sudden and violent deaths without an inquest, I know. That vessels can and do land immigrants with impunity, contrary to the police and quarantine regulations, is well known. And it is also a matter of notoriety that these vessels have been and are employed in taking government and church property as cargo to Port Phillip. If a surplus be stolen out of a chapel in Goulburn Street, a reward of £20 will be offered for the apprehension of the thief through the medium of the Gazette. But if one of the best and largest of our rural churches is stolen at Southport, the thieves can make a profitable trade of the material for 6 or 8 months with impunity. If a man wantonly throw off the coping of a bridge in Hobart Town, he's transported for 7 years. If the House of Correction at Southport, containing 360,000 bricks and shiploads of sawn timber, be sent to Melbourne, nothing is said. How happens it that government have granted a licence authorising the constable's hut in the police reserve at Southport to be converted into a wholesale gin palace? There are already upwards of 96 applications for Crown land in this district, 4/5 of whom intend to cultivate, besides a number of township allocations put up for sale, which, as soon as the Survey Office can grant the proper documents, will make this district the most populous region south of Hobart Town. Surely, with these facts before us, We ought to demand the protection and enforcement of the laws. The Courier, 26th of September, 1853. Those early 1850s accounts of the Huon and the further southwest no doubt lingered in the minds of some city people and left them with the impression that the area was a cesspool of drunkenness and outrageous criminality, a region of troubled and troublesome people that was probably best avoided by people of a certain social standing. And there was another aspect of the Huon population that undoubtedly added to the biases of some. A large number of the inhabitants were Irish Catholics, like the young Donnelly family. This was an era when simply naming someone as Irish was enough to evoke a wave of derogatory presumptions. The people of the Huon didn't see themselves in those bleak, disparaging terms. They pushed back with evidence of their hard work ethic, the amount of timber they sold to the local, intercolonial and international markets, the productivity of their land in supplying plentiful potatoes to Hobart and beyond, more potatoes per acre than the much-touted Table Cape area. They presented stories of their busy industry and employment in the local riverside sawmills and the ingenuity of the tramway system in accessing the tall timber in the deeper bush. The people of the Huon wanted the rest of the colony to recognise that their region was a positive place, worthy of pride, and they were a community of honest, hard-working people. The Honeywood district is the most prosperous in the Huon, if not in the whole colony, and there's no doubt the tram roads are the cause of it, for no matter how bad the weather is, the produce can be got out immediately. The inhabitants have plenty of energy, but they want assistance, and as there is abundance of splendid land at the back in every direction, it will pay the government well to help them. The present government road is a positive waste of money, for it is almost useless. John C. Roger, Sandy Bay. The Mercury, Hobart, 16th of October, 1861. The late 1850s and 1860s was an era when Huonites started laying bricks and mortar evidence of their cultural, intellectual and spiritual identities and aspirations. Their community was a thing of substance. They were a people to be taken seriously, and they weren't going anywhere. The Catholics opened St Mary's Church in Franklin in 1856. In 1857, there was a push for a decent road to connect the district to Hobart. The Anglicans laid the foundation stone for a new church to replace their original timber one in 1863. The governor laid the foundation stone for a mechanics institute at Franklin in 1860. The wider local population formed the Honeywood Debating and Mutual Improvement Association in that same year. Of all the districts in the colony, we should have selected the Huon from the popular idea entertained of its inhabitants as the last likely to make such efforts. These sawyers and splitters are setting an example to the metropolis, which is not much to our credit. We pretend to despise such advantages merely because we're too indolent to secure them for ourselves. The Mercury, Hobart, 3rd of October, 1860. All of this was the wider community background to the life of your young family, old man. It was a world of working-class aspiration where the crack of a whip encouraging a bullock team to drag timber through mud, might coincide with someone practicing their best lines for an upcoming debate. It was a world where community meant women supporting each other through the precarious business of child labour, where local pride was an antidote to the corrosive judgment of big city well-to-dos, where the wisdom of the old world was applied to the challenges of the new, and where the muscular struggle of labour, the kind of work that had been a basis for negative put-downs by the likes of the politician Gregson, proved to be the foundation for success in regattas and other colonial competitions. And if there was a certain spirit among the Hewanites that they'd show the rest of the judgmental colony a thing or two, then it's no surprise they opted for the somewhat Trumpian figure of John Donellan Balfe as their political representative. We've been asked why this journal was not represented at the laying of the foundation stone of the Huon Mechanics' Institute, and we have no objection to state our reasons for declining to send any gentleman from this office. Amongst the toasts to be proposed at the lunch was the customary one of the press, and this toast, at the instigation of John Donellan Balfe, who, like all men of the same stamp, entertains a very natural hatred towards the press, was struck out of the list. We confess at once that we feel quite indifferent to the compliment, so far as we are individually concerned, but this intentional departure from a practice which has long been universal was a studied insult to the whole press of the colony. We felt bound to resent it. We believe the press, and especially this journal, has deserved better treatment at the hands of the people of the Huon. We have, on all occasions, endeavoured to further the interests of that district, and we were contributors towards their Mechanics' Institute. Such an unjustifiable and uncalled-for slight, therefore, comes from them with a very bad grace indeed, and can do no injury save to those who thus allowed themselves to be persuaded into a course of action so undignified. Such a suggestion emanating from a person like Mr. Balfe is natural enough. Nothing he could do would ever awaken surprise. The degrading condition in which he presented himself before the assembly renders it unnecessary for us to advert to anything he may either do or say. But we are truly sorry that the residents of the Huon should have consented to an act so unworthy of them. However, they ought to be the best judges of what is most conducive to the prosperity and respectability of their district. We may differ with them upon this point, but we have no right to thrust our opinion down their throats. It is sufficient for us to see that the dignity of the press is not compromised by any act of ours, and in the present instance, we believe it has not been. The Hobart Town Daily Mercury, 4th of April, 1860.